Alright everyone, welcome back to the fourth video in our video series on creating Node.js apps from beginning to end. In this video, we are going to be creating our first Node.js server. So we're actually going to get it set up, we are going to start it, and then we're going to go into our browser and check it out and see what happens when we look at it in the browser. So let's get started. First things first, we're just going to create that folder like we always do, and this one I'm going to call Node server since that's what we're creating here. Then I'm going to open that in my terminal. So I'm in my working directory there, and then once I'm there, I'm going to say npm init with that yes flag. It's just going to create that, and then I'm going to open it all up in my text editor. So now I've got my text editor open with my project, and Node is in the project. And in this package.json, we have all the same stuff we always do. It's going to be looking for index.js, so let's go ahead and create that. Index.js, there we go. Now, what we're going to do here is we are going to create our server in this index.js file. Now, how you run index.js is you run node and then index.js. And we can actually create a script here to do that for us. So we're going to add a script here. We're going to call it start because it's going to be starting our project for us. And then we're just going to tell it node index.js. So now we can run npm start. It's going to look at this script, and then it's going to run this command right here, which is going to start up our index.js file, which is right here. So what do we put in this index.js file to create a server? Well, there's a module that comes with Node called HTTP. So we're going to import that in first, take a look at it. So we're going to set it equal to a variable. We're just going to call that variable HTTP, and then we're going to require, which is how you import stuff in Node, HTTP. And now that's going to import the HTTP module, set it equal to this variable so we can start using it. Now in order to use it, what we can do in order to create a server, it's really simple. It's just http dot create server. And that's it. There's an actual function there that's going to create a server. However, the server is going to take in something called a request listener right there. So that request listener wants a request object and a response object. What the request object is the request object is the incoming request from the user to our server. The response is the response that we're going to send back from our server to the user. So let's create this request listener. I'm going to call it on request do this because it's what we're going to be doing whenever we get a request. We're going to be calling this function. So let's define this. We're going to, remember, take in that request, and we're going to take in that response object as well so we can return it. Alright, so what we're going to do is we are going to say just console.log we got a request. That way we know that this is going to be working when we get a request. It's going to log out, we got a request. That way we know that it ran that correctly. Now we've got a request listener. It's taking in the request, sending out a response, and then how do we actually go to this? Where do we go to look at this? Well, we can tell it where to go right here by saying .listen. So we're telling it to listen. So we have a server, but our server, we can't access it until we tell it to listen somewhere. So we're going to tell it to listen on a certain port and a certain host name. I'm just going to use port 3000. And then for your host name, I'm going to use just the default local host, which is going to be 127.0.0.1. And that's pretty much going to be the same for everybody right there. So once you have that right there, now if you run this, your server is going to get created, and then it's going to start listening on this host name on that port. So let's go ahead and run npm start, which is that script we created earlier, and see that happen. So npm start, there we go, and you'll see right here it just ran a couple things. Now what's happening is it's listening on that host name on that port. So let's go check it out in our browser. We're going to say localhost, and then we're going to go to that port that we set up, which is 3000. And once we get that put in correctly. We're going to go there, and you're going to notice it gets hung up right here. It's just loading, 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 loading. It's not loading. So, but it's not telling us it doesn't exist, so we know that our server's there, but it's not loading for some reason. So why isn't it doing that? Well, we're going to take a look at that next lesson. This lesson, we learned how to get the HTTP module. We learned how to create our server with a request listener. And then we learned how to set it to listen on whatever host name and port that we want. So in the next lesson, we're going to look at why it's not loading and how to get it to load and actually send some responses back to the user when they try to access our server. So see you there.